CIC combat new surface contact bearing Yu-48 range. 85-kilometer high-speed closure, classification project 2235 Frig. The words sliced through the absolute nerve-wracking stillness. Wow of the USS Arleigh Burke's Combat Information Center like a knife at 9:47 a.m. November 1st, 2025, instantly shattering the routine of a quiet patrol in the central Black Sea. This was no fishing trawler or merchant vessel. This was the Russian Navy's most advanced multi-role frigate, the Admiral Gorskov, and she was moving with a hostile intentional acceleration, 85 kilometers. The distance was collapsing at over 50 ft per second. On the tactical action officer's main display, the Russian track was a rapidly tightening arrow aimed directly at the Arleigh Burke's waterline. A moment later, a deafening electronic shockwave, a pure raw burst of spanned energy, slammed the U.S. warship. It was the Russian frigate's 5P-20K frigate, M2M air search radar deliberately broadcasting at maximum power, a scream of electronic aggression designed to overwhelm the American ALQ-32V electronic warfare suite and announce the immediate threat. We see you, we are coming. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watched the Gorskov's digital track violate the international safety zones, its bow slicing through the Black Sea at 28 knots. The Russian captain was not just provoking a confrontation, he was intentionally driving a 4,550-ton warship toward a collision, forcing the American destroyer into a split-second decision that could ignite a shooting war. In the Arleigh Burke CIC, the atmosphere went from calm readiness to instant hyper-focused tension. The TAO didn't need to consult the rules of engagement. He knew the Russians' playbook. He barked, "Bridge Tau, sound 5 short blasts on the whistle," the international danger signal. All weapon systems remain in hot standby, but authorize AN Spy 1D to immediately commence full high-definition tracking on the Gorskov's UKVL cells. Combat bring SM-6 and ESSM readiness to maximum. We are establishing an immediate aggressive no-fail Aegis defense bubble. The American destroyer, a technological fortress in the Gray Sea, was locked in a staring contest with an adversary who was trying to push the world into a conflict. The gap was shrinking. The clock was ticking. The next 15 minutes would determine if this routine patrol would become the most significant naval confrontation of the decade. The stakes in this stretch of water couldn't be higher. This routine U.S. Navy Freedom of Navigation Operation FNOP was more than illegal transit. It was a powerful physical assertion of the right to traverse international waters, a right Moscow continuously and aggressively challenges. For the United States and NATO, maintaining freedom of the seas in this crucial choke point is the absolute core of deterrence. The entire global economy depends on these rules. The presence of the Arleigh Burke Flightwine version, displacing 8,300 tons with a crew of 300, signaled an uncompromising resolve. 4. Russia. This act was a direct challenge to its perceived sphere of influence, a geopolitical red line they are compelled to answer. The Black Sea Fleet, despite its crippling losses in the ongoing conflict, still operates with a doctrine of calculated escalation using reckless close passes and electronic harassment to intimidate NATO forces. They rely on the presumption that NATO's rules of engagement row will always prevent the first shot. The Russian objective to force the Arleigh Burke to change course to document the perceived retreat for propaganda and to gather real-time electronic intelligence on the U.S. destroyer's high V-value Aegis combat system without getting closer than their nerve and their survival instincts would allow. The Gorskov was positioned to demonstrate the perceived strength of the Russian state, attempting to project an image of a great power capable of denying access to the world's most powerful navy. This wasn't just about sea lanes. It was a test of wills, a technological chess match, and a psychological operation where the winner would control the narrative for months to come. The message being sent from the Arleigh Burke had to be unmistakable. Our will to enforce the law is greater than your will to break it. The threat was embodied by the Russian warship now just 50 km away, the project Countermeasures frigate Admiral Gorskov. This 550-ton multi-role ship is a symbol of Russia's modernized fleet, a vessel designed with reduced radar cross-section stealth technology and packed with serious offensive capability. Her primary motive in this maneuver was twofold: intimidation and intelligence collection. Psychologically, the Russian captain believed that by pushing the American ship to the brink of collision, he could reveal the American threshold for engagement. Tactically, the Gorskov's crew was actively employing its formidable Prospe electronic warfare EW suite. This system was not just passively listening, it was aggressively jamming and spoofing, trying to blind the U.S. destroyer's secondary sensor arrays and overload its communications links, effectively seeking to break the American kill chain before it could even be initiated. The greatest threat the Gorskov posed was her 16-cell Yukaska vertical launch system VLS, which could hold a lethal mix of caliber NK land attack cruise missiles, keyed 800 Onyx anti-H-ship missiles, and most worryingly, the 3N-22 Zircon hypersonic anti-H-ship missile. The Zircon is Russia's terrifying answer to the West, capable of speeds up to Mach 9 with a range exceeding 600 miles. Against a target moving at such velocity, the American Aegis system would have an intercept window measured in seconds, not minutes, turning any engagement into a hard-stopping split-second decision. By maneuvering into a position to cross the Arleigh Burke's TE, a classic naval combat position, the Gorskov was effectively daring the U.S. ship to expose its flanks while simultaneously positioning itself for an optimal launch trajectory, forcing the American crew to treat the inbound Russian vessel as a pre-launch warning indicator for a devastating hypersonic strike. The American response, built on the doctrine of integrated air and missile defense AMD, was already in motion, establishing a perfect kill chain that began 500 kilometers above the Black Sea. The first link, a USA-224 KH-11 Kennan reconnaissance satellite whose electro-optical sensors had already captured the Gorskov's departure from its home port hours earlier. This initial intelligence was instantly relayed to the Joint Interagency Task Force and down to the USS Arleigh Burke's Combat Information Center via the robust Secure Global Broadcast Service GBS link. Within seconds of the Gorskov's aggressive acceleration, the Arleigh Burke's immense ANPA-1DV passive electronically scanned array radar, a key component of the Aegis system, had already locked onto the Russian frigate. The SPY-1D, with a peak power of 6 MW and a scanning range of over 200 nautical miles, was now tracking the Gorskov's 32 cell-rads and its 130 mm 192 main gun as primary threat emitters, distinguishing them from the ship's 4 550-ton bulk. The Aegis computer system, which possesses more raw processing power than the entire 1969 Apollo program that landed humans on the moon, instantly calculated a fire control solution, FCS, for every viable inbound Russian weapon, from the P-800 Onyx to the 130 mm shell. The Arleigh Burke was armed with 90-plus vertical launch system VLS cells loaded with a deep magazine of RIM 162 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, ESSM, for short-range swarm defense, Standard Missile 2 Block SM-2 for area defense, and the ultimate air defense bullet, the RIM 174 Standard Missile 6 SM-6. The SM-6, a $4.1 million projectile, has an extended range capability of over 200 nautical miles and is capable of terminal homing, thanks to its active radar seeker turning the ship's defensive of shield into an overwhelming offensive capability. The Arleigh Burke was not a static target. It was a worked mobile fortress seamlessly connected to every allied air and sea asset via Link 16 and the Cooperative Engagement Capability CC, allowing the destroyer to engage threats its own radar couldn't even see. The U.S. Navy's tactical response was not a reaction. It was a premeditated, perfectly synchronized kill chain waiting for a single human command to go kinetic. 10:05 a.m. Black Sea, range 12 kilometers. The Admiral Gorskov was now dangerously close, its bow pointed directly at the Arleigh Burke's hull, a massive displacement wake foaming off its sharp profile. The Tau Lieutenant Commander Miller watched the enemy frigate's track on his screen, his breathing shallow and controlled. CIC Combat Gorskov is violating the 10-kilometer safety zone. They are maintaining 28 knots, showing no intent to maneuver. Collision is imminent. A faint, high-pitched whine was picked up by the Arleigh Burke's sensitive AN/Peking-B low horizon tracking radar. It was the characteristic sound of a Russian MiG-31K heavy interceptor, known to carry the KH-47M2 Kinjal hypersonic missile launching from a coastal airbase. The U.S. destroyer's combat system operator yelled, "Air defense warning, yellow high-speed air track inbound bearing 03 calculating Mach 4+. The Gorskov was providing the perfect radar mask for a coordinated kill chain, a close-in distraction coupled with a devastating high-speed strike. Miller barked, "Maintain course. Do not flinch. Release the Mark 36 decoy launching system DLS-4 rounds port and starboard ANSLQ-32. Commence full high-power jamming on all Gorskov fire control channels. Suddenly, the world for the Russian frigate went blindingly, terrifyingly silent. The Gorskov's Puma 5P10 fire control radar, which guides its weapons, was suddenly overwhelmed by a massive burst of targeted digital noise, rendering it useless. The Gorskov was now on a parallel course, maintaining distance, no longer converging. Miller didn't wait. Bridge Tiao, execute plan. Sentry Alpha. The forward MX-100 Motor 5 EO-245 in 62 caliber naval gun, a highly automated piece of engineering capable of firing 20 rounds per minute, rotated with a silent hydraulic purpose. The gunfire control system GFCS had a firing solution aimed not at the Gorskov's hull, but at a point 300 mm directly ahead of its bow. Exactly 300 minutes. A 5,000-hour 34 HEV high explosive variable time round left the barrel at Mach 2.5. The sound of monumental physical thump boom was audible for miles. The shell detonated precisely on its mark, not impacting the water, but AIR bursting 50 FT above the waves, sending a cascade of shrapnel and a towering, disorienting geyser of spray and smoke directly into the Gorskov's bridge and forward observation posts. The intent was not to sink, but to shock and deafen, proving beyond any doubt that the Arleigh Burke had a perfect calculated firing solution and the will to use it. The aftermath was immediate and chillingly effective. The Russian frigate, its bridge crew likely stunned and soaking wet from the air-burst shrapnel's wake, instantly reduced speed. The track on the Arleigh Burke's console showed the Gorskov breaking off its aggressive parallel course and beginning a slow, deliberate turn to starboard away from the U.S. destroyer. The confrontation had lasted just 20 minutes from the initial high-speed contact to the warning shot. Russia's calculated escalation had met an unforgiving, perfectly timed counter-escalation. The immediate result was a powerful, undisputed American victory. The U.S. Navy had enforced. The rules maintained its course, refused to be intimidated, and delivered a non-lethal, highly professional warning that could not be spun or denied. The price to the Arleigh Burke was one 34 5-inch shell, a calculated cost of $5,000, and a few seconds of elevated heart rate for the crew. For the Gorshkov, the cost was far higher. They had not only failed their mission to deter the phone-op, but their most advanced systems, the Provet Mu suite and the Puma fire control radar, were likely overwhelmed. Their operational parameters fully mapped and logged by the Arleigh Burke's ANSLQ-32 for future electronic warfare countermeasures. They retreated, having handed the U.S. Navy invaluable electronic intelligence. Today's lesson is not about the destructive power of a warship, but about the unstoppable, decisive power of the kill chain. The Gorskov learned a painful public truth in modern naval warfare. The speed of information processing and sharing is infinitely more crucial than the speed of a projectile. The Russian frigate, though modern, was fundamentally an isolated single-node threat, which the U.S. Navy's System of Systems doctrine, the complete worked integration of satellite EW suite, Aegis, radar, and the gun, could instantly isolate, neutralize, and overwhelm. The Russian captain's fundamental mistake was believing that a close improvisation was merely a game of chicken. It wasn't. It was an intelligence operation for the Arleigh Burke. The moment he accelerated, his fate was sealed, his electronic signature recorded, and his tactical envelope fully compromised. The Arleigh Burke showed the world that American power is not measured by the size of the explosion, but by the precision of the deterrence and the unflinching speed of the decision loop. The rules of the sea are non-negotiable, and anyone who challenges them will find themselves not in a fair fight, but subjected to an overwhelming integrated defense that is always faster, always more precise, and always ready to deliver a measured but undeniable response. You can try to close on a U.S. Navy ship, but you will only get close enough to see the inevitable warning shot. A shot that tells you the $4.1 million SM-6 missile in the VLS cell behind the gun is already locked, loaded, and waiting for the next time you try to break the law. The oceans are open, the rules stand, and the U.S. Navy is the unflinching guarantor.